The fragrance of countless white lilies suffocated her, each petal a splinter in her heart beneath the shadow of a centuries-old oak tree. 8 months pregnant and completely alone, Emily stood hidden, watching the man, still legally her husband, slide a diamond ring onto another woman's finger. He was a tycoon, a giant in the tech industry, and he was humiliating her in the grandest, cruelest way possible. But Ethan didn't know the truths she carried, silent promises whispered in places he could never reach. He thought she was fragile, defeated. He was about to learn otherwise. She was the storm. The ceremony was a display of vulgar luxury, every moment choreographed against the stunning backdrop of the Ashford estate, perched on the banks of Lake Halden. Tourists on nearby boats paused to snap photos of the fairy tale scene. But for Emily Carter, concealed among the trees, it was just the last sparkling nail in the coffin of her marriage. Her husband, Ethan Walker, a name synonymous with power in Silicon Valley, was marrying his mistress, Vivian Clark. The irony was poison on her tongue. It was in this very garden, under the same old wisteria, that Ethan had knelt and asked her to be his forever 3 years ago. She could almost hear his voice in her head now, promising her forever, pressing that emerald ring into her shaking hand as if she were the treasure he'd guard for life. And she, foolish, trusting, had believed every vow, wrapped her soul around his, blind to the rot growing behind his charm. Back then, he'd called her his anchor, his calm in the storm, the only pure piece of his chaotic, glittering life. Now she was just a blemish on his perfect new narrative, a swelling belly that ruined his polished facade. Emily's hand rested on her rounded stomach, feeling their son, not yet born, press a gentle kick against her palm as if sensing her heartbreak. She had begged Ethan, pleaded with him when he first admitted the affair and his plan to marry Vivienne. "Think of the baby, Ethan." She had whispered it, her voice raw and torn by a pain so deep it felt like it might break her ribs. "He deserves a family." Ethan's reply had been cutting, clinical. "I'll provide for him, Emily. He'll have everything money can buy. But I won't be trapped in a loveless marriage." Loveless. The word had echoed through the cavernous, sterile penthouse they used to share. Now stripped of her books, her paintings, every trace of her warmth. Sometimes she still dreamed of that empty space, the echo of her laughter bouncing off cold marble floors where warmth had once lived. It haunted her how easily he had turned their home into a museum without her, and in the deepest part of her, a voice whispered that maybe he was right. Maybe she really was just soft, disposable, forgettable. She caught herself trembling, her palm pressed protectively over her child, clinging to the single proof that she mattered to someone, even if that someone couldn't yet speak. For a heartbeat she wanted to run, vanish, surrender to the quiet nothingness he demanded. But she dug her nails into her palm, dragging herself back from the edge. Not today. Not here. Had it always been loveless for him? Did the late nights comforting him when deals collapsed, the soft laughter, the easy silence over shared dinners, mean nothing at all? From her hidden perch, she could see him perfectly. He looked devastating in his custom-tailored Armani tux. He bent down, murmured something in Vivian's ear. So intimate, so familiar that it made Emily's chest seize. Vivienne, a statuesque former runway model with eyes like frost, threw her head back and laughed, the sound carrying across the immaculate grounds. She was everything Emily wasn't. Vivienne was sparkle and spectacle, her life as carefully filtered as her social media feed. Emily was quiet, thoughtful, a woman who loved old novels and rainy days. Ethan had once claimed that was exactly what he adored about her. "You are my peace," he used to whisper. Now he clearly craved chaos instead. The press had swarmed the estate, an army of cameras held back by velvet ropes and burly security. They called it the wedding of the decade. The headlines were already drafted. Tech billionaire Ethan Walker wed socialite Vivienne Clark at Lakeside Manor. Her existence, her place as his legal wife, was nothing but a footnote now. He was determined to erase her. 2 weeks ago, his lawyers had delivered divorce papers, along with a settlement that would seem generous to most but was an insult to her soul. Take the money and disappear. Be a good, quiet woman. She hadn't signed, not because she hoped for a miracle, but because she refused to make it easy for him. Her lawyer, a relentless bulldog named Christopher Shaw, had warned her to hold firm. "We have leverage, Emily. You're pregnant. It's clear-cut adultery. Don't give in yet. But watching them now, Vivienne's smug grin as she flaunted a massive diamond that dwarfed the elegant emerald Ethan once gave Emily, she felt her resolve tremble. Her throat tightened around a rising scream she swallowed back, her spine burning with a rage she hadn't known she still possessed. What was left to fight for? He had already won. He had the press eating out of his hand, the woman he wanted on his arm, and the power to bury every inconvenient truth. A gust of wind stirred the oak leaves above her, a sudden chill in the warm air by the lake. Dark clouds were gathering over the distant hills, a stark break from the blinding sun bathing the wedding in golden light. It felt like a sign. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket, one discreet vibration. Emily pulled it out and saw a message from an unlisted number she knew instantly. Stay calm. Reinforcements on the way. Emily's breath caught. A spark of defiance flickered in her chest, something she hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time in so long, a fragment of the woman she'd once been, unyielding, cunning, the hidden heiress who never bowed to anyone, cracked through the numbness that heartbreak had wrapped around her. She clutched her phone like a lifeline, letting that old steel flow back into her blood. But behind the flicker, fear slithered in too. What if this was just another false hope? Another cruel tease before he destroyed her completely? Her free hand hovered over her belly as she forced her lungs to keep steady breaths, silently begging her baby to forgive her for dragging him through this battlefield. She turned back toward the wedding, toward the man so determined to erase her. For the first time all day, a faint but real smile tugged at her lips. Ethan thought he knew everything about her. He knew Emily Carter, the quiet museum curator from an ordinary family. He had no idea who Emily Whitcomb truly was, and no clue that the silent network she had built, powerful people from a life he never imagined, were about to crash into his carefully curated fantasy. Like an approaching storm, the first heavy drops of rain splattered against the dark silk of her maternity dress. The show was about to start. The ceremony reached its peak. The officiant, someone whose face often graced celebrity gossip sites, declared them husband and wife. Applause exploded from the guests, a symphony of wealthy insiders celebrating the union of power and beauty. Ethan dipped Vivienne into a dramatic kiss, clearly staged for the cameras. It was flawless, a perfect snapshot that would headline every gossip column by morning. For Emily, watching unseen, it struck like a blow to the ribs. A single hot tear slipped free despite her resolve. She swiped it away fiercely. He would not get the satisfaction of seeing her broken. Not again. The pain clawed so viciously at her ribs that she pressed a trembling hand to her belly, as if to steady her son's tiny heartbeat. Let him never learn to kneel for anyone's approval, she vowed silently. Let him inherit her fire, not Ethan's cruelty. In that moment, the last lingering scraps of the woman who loved Ethan Walker died. The dull ache that had shadowed her for months turned into something cold, sharp, and clear. This was no longer just heartbreak. It was resolve. She needed to leave. Staying would mean drowning in humiliation. She gripped the rough bark of the oak to steady herself and turned to head for the plain sedan she'd hidden down a side street. But as she pivoted, she saw them, Ethan and Vivienne, arm in arm, not walking to their reception, but straight toward her grove. A small cluster of followers, his best man, her maid of honor, trailed behind them, glasses of champagne in hand. Panic rose in Emily's throat. He couldn't see her like this. Bloated, devastated, a ghost haunting his celebration. A wild, humiliating thought flickered. Maybe if she begged, he'd let her leave unseen. Maybe she could still slip away before he humiliated her further. But the surge of shame only fueled her anger. For a heartbeat, she wished she could vanish into the soil itself, become air, become invisible again. But that old core inside her refused. Not this time. If he wanted to bury her, she'd drag him into the grave first. She tried to melt deeper into the shadows, but it was too late. Ethan's eyes, sharp and cold, locked on hers. For a split second, his smile twitched, then settled into a mask of rage. Emily. His voice was low, dangerous. What the hell are you doing here? Vivienne clutched his arm, her look a perfect mix of fake concern and petty triumph. Oh, Ethan, darling, look. It's your ex. I didn't realize she got an invitation. She let the word ex drip from her tongue like poison. The entourage fell silent, eyes darting between the radiant new bride, the seething groom, and the heavily pregnant woman hidden among the trees. The air crackled, more dramatic than any vows spoken minutes before. "I wasn't invited," Emily said, her voice steady, almost calm. She held Ethan's gaze, refusing to flinch. "I'm still your wife, Ethan, in the eyes of the law, if not your heart. I thought I should witness the moment you committed bigamy." A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't be absurd. The papers were filed. You were given a generous offer. It's your own fault for dragging this out." "Generous?" Emily let out a hollow, humorless laugh. "You call that generous? A pathetic sum to erase 3 years of my life and buy my silence while you flaunt your betrayal to the world?" Vivienne stepped closer, her voice dripping with sweet venom. She glanced pointedly at Emily's swollen belly. "You're embarrassing yourself. You're overwrought. It's the hormones, I imagine. Ethan has promised to take care of you. Of it. You should be grateful." The flick of Vivienne's manicured hand toward her unborn son was the final fracture in Emily's control. She stepped fully into view, her presence suddenly undeniable. Rain now poured steadily, plastering her hair to her face, but she didn't care. "Grateful?" Her voice cut through the night. "Grateful that my husband is discarding me and his own son like an asset that's no longer profitable? Grateful he's replacing me with you, a woman whose only accomplishment is crawling out of obscurity by sleeping with married men?" Vivienne's face flushed an ugly crimson under her flawless makeup. "How dare you?" "I dare," Emily said, her voice a near whisper that carried more weight than all their shouting. "You have no idea what I dare." She turned her eyes to Ethan. There was no love left there, only a frozen, bitter disappointment. "I came here today to see for myself exactly what I was losing, and I have. I see a weak man so terrified of his own heart that he surrounds himself with hollow, shiny things to feel powerful. And I see a woman so desperate for validation that she's willing to build her happiness on the wreckage of someone else's." Ethan stepped forward, his hand lifting as if to silence her. "That's enough, Emily." "It is," she cut in, pulling her eyes away from him as if he no longer deserved to exist in her world. "It's more than enough." She turned her back on him, on the stunned wedding guests, on the father of her unborn child. She began to walk away, each step slow but unyielding. Above her, the sky cracked open. The gentle drizzle turned savage, a curtain of rain hammering the estate grounds. Thunder split the air, making Vivienne squeal and clutch Ethan's arm, shrinking against him like a frightened child. But Emily didn't flinch. She moved through the downpour with her chin high, the soaked fabric clinging to the bold curve of her belly. She was leaving behind her old life, a solitary, rain-drenched figure walking away from a ruined society wedding. For a heartbeat, doubt slithered under her ribs. What if she was wrong? What if all she'd clung to was pride, and all she'd earned was loneliness? The thought pierced sharper than the storm, but she pressed a hand over her stomach, feeling her son's soft, defiant kick, an answer from the tiny heart she would never let him see break. She kept walking. Each step pounded into the mud felt like tearing free pieces of her past, one for every lie, every whispered apology, every night she'd stared at an empty side of the bed and begged herself to believe in him. The rain washed it all away, drop by drop, until all that remained was her. Ethan watched her go, his face an unreadable mask. Was that flicker in his eyes regret, or just irritation that his perfect day had been overshadowed by a thunderstorm and a woman he'd tried to erase? Emily reached the grand iron gates at the edge of the Ashford estate. Over the roar of the storm, the deep hum of an engine rolled closer. It wasn't a taxi, it was the sound of consequence. Headlights cut through the sheets of rain. A long, black car, sleek, low, impossibly expensive, pulled up and stopped without a sound. A Rolls-Royce Phantom. Its black paint shimmered like liquid obsidian in the stormlight. The back door opened with a soft, luxurious click. An umbrella, also black, unfurled. The chauffeur, in a crisp uniform that screamed old-world dignity, held it high over Emily's head, shielding her as though she were royalty. Inside, a shadow moved. Emily paused at the open door, casting one last glance back through the torrential rain. She could just make out Ethan and Vivienne standing frozen on the lawn, their perfect wedding dissolving into mud and confusion. Who was Emily Carter? They were surely wondering, This quiet, discarded wife, the insignificant museum curator? The answer arrived on 4 silent wheels and a pedigree that dwarfed Ethan's empire. He was about to discover that the woman he thought he'd erased was far more powerful than he'd ever imagined, and her allies didn't play by his rules. Inside the phantom, the chaos outside vanished, replaced by a hush of leather and layered silence. The air smelled of authority, ancient money, and the unspoken promise that justice was coming. Seated opposite her was a man Emily hadn't seen face to face in 5 years, though his influence had lingered in every quiet corner of her life. He was Leonardo Whitcomb, her godfather. To the public, he was a myth, an elusive kingmaker in European finance, whose fortune was so old and so deep that Ethan Walker's millions looked like pocket change. He was in his late 60s, his hair a crown of silver, his piercing eyes as cold and precise as ever, his face carved from the same stone that had built empires. He was family, not by blood, but by a loyalty that had bound them for decades, long before she ever met Ethan. "Leo," Emily breathed. Relief hit so hard her knees nearly buckled. He reached across the plush seat and took her cold hand in his warm, steady grip. His touch was solid, paternal. "My dear Principessa," Leonardo murmured, his voice a rough, calming growl. "Did you think we would abandon you?" A tremor of shame slid under her ribs, the same hidden shame she had nursed in the silence of sleepless nights, that maybe, just maybe, she was discardable. And yet here he was, proving her wrong. A sob nearly broke through her throat, the sound she had swallowed again and again behind penthouse doors, in cold bathrooms, in the middle of silent nights where no one knew she was breaking. Here with him, she let it tremble in her bones. Tears, tears she had refused to let Ethan see, welled up and blurred her vision. "I didn't know who else to call." "You didn't need to call," he said, brushing a thumb over her knuckles. "We have been watching. We let Mr. Walker craft his own rope, and now he's tied it into a fine noose for himself." His gaze drifted out the rain-streaked window toward the estate where Ethan and Vivienne were being hustled inside by panicked staff. "He is about to learn an ancient truth, Emily. The Whitcomb name is not to be mocked." Emily winced at the name, one she had buried the moment she married Ethan, craving an ordinary life free from her legacy. The Whitcomb family, discreet patrons, political kingmakers, centuries-old stewards of European power. She had hidden it all, hoping to be loved simply for herself. "He never knew," she whispered, wiping away a tear. "I wanted a life that was only mine." "And you deserved that," Leonardo said softly, his steel gaze warm for the first time. "But you gave your heart to a man who understands only one thing: power. He mistook your humility for weakness. He mistook your independence for loneliness, a grave miscalculation." The chauffeur shut the door, and the car glided away from the estate with a silent, commanding grace. As they passed the main gates, another vehicle, a black Mercedes Maybach, fell in behind them, and behind that, a black Bentley. A solemn procession formed, a funeral march for the life Ethan Walker thought he had secured. "Who's in the other cars?" Emily asked, curiosity pushing through the bone-deep exhaustion. "Allies," Leonardo said simply. "Family. People who owe your father a debt of honor. People who know that when one of us is threatened, all of us respond." He gestured to a small fridge built into the armrest. "Water?" He poured her a glass of San Pellegrino from the familiar green bottle, something small and comforting. Then he poured himself a short glass of deep amber whiskey. "Now," he said, taking a sip, "tell me everything, every ugly truth. Leave nothing out." Emily drew a deep breath. For months she'd been drowning, her story ignored, her hurt brushed aside. But now she had the ear of one of the most feared and revered men in the world, so she told him. Her voice grew stronger as she unraveled it all. The dismissive jabs, the subtle gaslighting, the way Ethan had methodically cut her off from friends until she had no one left but him. She told him about discovering the affair, the gut-wrenching confrontation, the cold-blooded wedding plans with Vivienne, while she was still living under his roof, pregnant with his child. Leonardo listened in silence, his gray eyes turning to flint. He was never a man of wasted words, but his quiet stillness was more terrifying than any shouted curse. When she finished, the air inside the car seemed to thrum with the storm outside. "He took your shares in Walker Holdings under the prenup, didn't he?" Leonardo asked, voice calm. Too calm. "Yes," Emily said. "He said it was just a formality. He put them in a blind trust controlled by his board. Leonardo's smile was a thin, ice-cold thing. His board, he murmured. Let's talk about his board. Robert Chen, head of Asian investments. His firm was days away from bankruptcy in '08. Your father guaranteed a loan that saved him. A loan never called in. He tapped a finger. Lady Annabel Fairfax, British aristocrat. Her family's ancestral home was about to be repossessed by the crown. A discreet word from your uncle, problem solved. Another finger. And my personal favorite, Javier Morales, brilliant tech genius from Spain. But once, as a young man, he poked around government servers he shouldn't have touched. Your cousin, Rome's top intelligence liaison, made sure that file vanished forever. Emily stared at him, stunned, speechless. She'd always known her family carried influence, but not this. Not this invisible worldwide web of debts and whispered favors. 3 out of 7 board members at Walker Holdings, Leonardo said, his smile growing like a wolf's grin. They owe their freedom, their fortunes, their reputations to the Whitcomb family. They have waited years for a chance to repay that favor. I believe they'll get the call tonight, before Mr. Walker and his new bride finish their wedding cake. He leaned back against the leather seat, swirling the amber in his glass. He wanted to erase you, Emily. Instead, he's made you visible to us again. He reminded us of our duty to you. By sunrise over Lake Halden tomorrow, Ethan Walker will find that the empire he's so proud of is nothing but a house of cards. And we, his voice turned to a chill whisper, we are the wind. The convoy of black cars didn't head for an airport or a luxury hotel. Instead, they wound up a narrow, hidden road deep to the wooded hills above the lake, a place tourists never glimpsed. They passed beneath an old stone archway, weathered but strong, unmarked by any sign, and arrived at a sprawling, secluded estate that had belonged to the Whitcomb family for over 4 centuries. Falcon Hollow. It was no gaudy showcase like the Ashford estate. Falcon Hollow was quiet, impregnable power. It was Emily's childhood home, a place she hadn't set foot in since her mother's funeral. As the Rolls-Royce rolled to a stop on the gravel drive, the villa's massive oak doors swung open. Familiar, loyal faces waited. Not with pity, but with a fierce, unspoken respect. Benvenuta a casa principessa, the elderly butler Massimo said, his voice thick with emotion. Welcome home. Inside, the air was cool, carrying the scent of beeswax and ancient stone. The men from the other cars were already gathered in the grand library, a soaring, 2-story room lined with priceless books and anchored by a massive fireplace older than most nations. These were the allies Leonardo had promised. A silent, formidable circle of power. There was Kenji Tanaka, a Japanese industrial magnate whose calm exterior concealed a razor-sharp mind for business. His father had once been rescued from a hostile takeover by Emily's grandfather. He bowed deeply to her. Miss Whitcomb, it is an honor to stand beside you. Beside him stood Sheikh Rashid Al Fulan, a member of a ruling Emirati family whose investments quietly controlled vast segments of the global energy market. He had shared lecture halls at Oxford with Emily's older brother. Their bond ran deeper than contracts. Emily, he said, his voice warm but his eyes unyielding, tell me what you need. It is yours. And then there was Elena Petrova, sharp, immaculate, and more intimidating than any corporate titan alive. She ran one of the world's most elite private security and intelligence firms. Her debt was the most personal. Emily's mother, a fierce philanthropist in her time, had rescued Elena from a trafficking ring in Eastern Europe when she was barely a teenager and paid for her education. Elena owed everything to the Whitcomb matriarch. He will not see it coming, Elena said, her Russian cadence slicing each word. My teams are in position. We have had Walker Holdings under passive surveillance for 48 hours. We have found irregularities, many. This was her family's true power. Not just money, but an invisible network of loyalty. Threads of debt and honor spun across continents, ready to be called in without hesitation. Ethan had tried to disgrace a woman he believed to be alone. In truth, he had picked a fight with a dynasty. Leonardo took his place at the head of the enormous oak table. Friends, he began, his voice filling the cavernous room, thank you for coming on such short notice. Our purpose is clear. We are here to restore balance. Ethan Walker has insulted not only Emily, but the honor of every house represented here. He turned as a large screen dropped soundlessly from the ceiling. Elena. With pleasure, Elena said, tapping her tablet. An intricate chart of Walker Holdings appeared. His empire rests on three main pillars: finance, tech, and high-end real estate. It appears solid, but it is not. He has been, how shall I say, creative, with debt structures, shell companies, obscured losses, inflated valuations. Watch. She swiped again, and a tangled web of offshore accounts blinked into view. Money flowing through the Cayman Islands, Panama, Liechtenstein. My forensic team traced the pattern. It's a classic Ponzi scheme, only polished to pass for genius. He uses money from new investors to pay the old, skimming millions for himself. The same funds financed today's little circus. A chill spread through Emily's bones. She had known Ethan was cunning, ruthless even, but she had never pictured him a fraud in a hand-stitched tuxedo. The linchpin, Elena continued crisply, is investor trust. If that trust evaporates, if key stakeholders pull out at once, everything falls apart. Instantly. Sheikh Rashid leaned forward, fingertips pressed together. My fund holds a large stake in his new tech initiative. We plan to double down next quarter. A thin, humorless smile curved his mouth. I will instruct my advisors to exit immediately. Official reason: loss of confidence in senior leadership. Kenji Tanaka gave a slight nod. My firms supply the rare earth minerals for his devices. I foresee severe supply chain interruptions beginning at midnight, Tokyo time. Most unfortunate. Leonardo's eyes shifted to Emily. And the board members I mentioned, Robert Chen, Lady Annabelle Fairfax, Javier Morales. They wait for your call. Combined, they control 40% of the voting shares, more than enough to force an emergency meeting, enough to push a vote of no confidence, enough to demand an independent audit, which, thanks to Elena's findings, will be catastrophic for him. He slid a slim satellite phone across the polished wood toward her. The call should come from you, Principessa. Emily looked at the phone, then lifted her eyes to the circle of unwavering faces around her. They were not acting out of pity. They were acting according to a code of honor. Ethan, in all his arrogance, could never fathom. He had broken the silent rules of their world, and this was the consequence. Emily lifted the phone, her hand perfectly steady. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. About shielding her son from his father's rotten legacy. About reclaiming her own name. Put Robert Chen on, she said, her voice clear, unwavering. One by one, she made the calls, precise and unflinching, dismantling the board that had once protected Ethan Walker. While she spoke, Elena projected a live feed onto the massive screen, a high-definition view from a discreet surveillance drone hovering over the Ashford Estates Grand Ballroom. The reception was in full swing. Ethan and Vivian were dancing in a wash of soft candlelight, oblivious to the approaching cataclysm. They looked invincible, victorious. Ethan lifted his champagne glass, almost certainly toasting the flawless new chapter of his life. In the quiet stone library of Falcon Hollow, surrounded by her silent legion of allies, Emily watched him on the screen. She felt nothing, no sorrow, no hatred. Just a calm detachment, like an audience member watching a badly written movie. The man on that screen was a fraud. His world, a polished lie. The first alert buzzed on Sheikh Rashid's phone. He checked it and looked up at the room. Asian markets open in an hour, he said evenly. My sell order is live. It will be the opening trade. Billions withdrawn at once. Every automated market system will flag it immediately. Elena's smile was sharp, wicked. And my anonymous leak, along with a neat starter file of proof, just hit the inbox of Catherine Miles at the Wall Street Journal. She is relentless. She'll have it up in under an hour. Leonardo lifted his glass of whiskey, not to the screen but to Emily. To new beginnings, he said. Emily nodded once. A calm, grim power settled deep in her bones. The trap was sprung. Every piece was in motion. Outside, the storm over Lake Halden had passed, leaving behind a sky so clear and sharp it seemed unreal. A sky full of stars. But for Ethan Walker, the real storm was just arriving. The first sign that something was wrong at the reception was subtle. A senior aide stepped in and whispered something urgently into Ethan's ear as he launched into a self-congratulatory toast. Ethan's smile stiffened. Irritation flickered across his features. He brushed the man off. Minutes later, another aide found him, this one pale as a ghost. He shoved a tablet into Ethan's hands. On it was the live pre-market data from Hong Kong. Walker Holdings, WHC, was plummeting. A catastrophic vertical drop of 60%. The reason? A sudden, massive sell-off by the Alfulon Sovereign Wealth Fund. Ethan felt his chest go cold. He mumbled a quick excuse to a bewildered Vivienne and stormed into a side study, slamming the door behind him. His top financial advisors were already on a chaotic conference call, voices tangled with panic. "What the hell is happening? Why did Rashid pull out?" Ethan barked into the phone. "We don't know," his CFO stammered. "Their official statement just hit the wire. A sudden and total loss of faith in WHC's leadership and financial transparency. Ethan, it's triggering a sell-off tsunami. Hedge funds are shorting us as we speak." Before he could absorb the first gut punch, his phone pinged with a news alert. The Wall Street Journal. The headline knocked the breath from his lungs. Walker Holdings, House of Cards, exclusive leaks point to massive fraud, SEC investigation looms. The article cut him to the bone, meticulous, relentless. It outlined the offshore shell games, the inflated valuations, the buried debt. Elena's team had given the reporters just enough to draw blood, without crossing the line into libel. It didn't accuse him outright, but the implications were lethal. The sources devastatingly credible, the questions impossible to ignore. And it was signed by Catherine Miles. Get PR on this. Get legal on the phone. Sue them all. Ethan yelled, voice cracking, sweat beading at his temple. "We can't," his head of comms squeaked back. "They're not accusing. They're reporting leaks. It's bulletproof reporting, Ethan. Reuters, Bloomberg, and AP just picked it up. It's global." And then came the final blow. An email landed in his inbox. Emergency board meeting notification. From the office of Lady Annabelle Fairfax. Agenda. Vote of no confidence in CEO Ethan Walker. Motion to initiate full independent forensic audit. Co-sponsored by Robert Chen and Javier Morales. Ethan's eyes scanned the names. Chen, Fairfax, Morales. It couldn't be real. It was impossible. They had been his closest confidants, men and women whose allegiance he had never once doubted. Ethan had handpicked his board to be a chorus of nods and signatures, a ring of powerful people he assumed owed him their loyalty. Now he felt the floor vanish beneath him. This wasn't a random dip in the market or a bad headline. This was a kill shot, a surgical takedown. His mind scrambled for an explanation, hunting for the mastermind behind this precision strike. And then, like a ghost rising from a grave, an image cut through the panic. Emily walking away through the storm, head high, rain soaking her dress but not her pride. The black Rolls-Royce, the quiet command in her last words, "You have no idea what I dare." The memory cut so sharply he nearly gagged. That was the look of a woman who no longer feared losing him, because she had already decided he was nothing worth keeping. He had mistaken silence for weakness. What a fool. No, it couldn't be. Emily, the meek, bookish museum curator, the wife he had pulled from obscurity. His office door slammed open. Vivienne stormed in, her face twisted in rage and disbelief. "Ethan, what is going on? My father just called. He says your stock is worthless. Everyone's leaving. They're all staring at us like we're criminals." "Get out, Vivienne." Ethan's voice was soft, deadly. "Don't you talk to me like that. I'm your wife. A title worth nothing by sunrise," he spat back, the full weight of his collapse crushing him from the inside out. "This is her doing." "Emily." Vivienne stared, wide-eyed. "Emily? What does she have to do with any of this? She's nobody." "Nobody." Ethan laughed, a jagged, hysterical bark that bordered on madness. "We are fools, Vivienne. Blind, arrogant fools." His laughter cracked into a choking sound that didn't even reach his eyes. He thought of the nights he'd mocked her timid voice, the way she'd flinched at his indifference. And behind that soft mask, a monster of patience, and now, retribution. He'd been so sure of himself, so certain that she was nothing without him. He'd never bothered to look deeper than the tidy bio she'd offered up. Who was she really? Who were the people who came for her in black cars and shut him out of his own world overnight? His empire, glass, steel, codes, and zeros, was disintegrating like ash in the wind. Calls poured in, lenders retracting loans, partners triggering exit clauses, the SEC publicly confirming an investigation. It was over, in the span of a single champagne-soaked dance. Back at Falcon Hollow, Emily and her allies watched the chaos unfold in calm silence. News reports, collapsing stock tickers, paparazzi shots of guests bolting from the once grand reception. They saw Vivienne, wedding gown crumpled and stained, screaming at her father on the phone. Her picture-perfect fairy tale dissolving in front of the cameras. Then Alina switched the feed. A live security camera outside Ethan's private study at the Ashford estate. Ethan appeared, disheveled, hunted, making a last desperate call. "We have audio," Alina said evenly. Ethan's ragged voice filled the library. "Marcus. Get me Marcus Shaw. Now." A pause, then a tremor of panic. "What do you mean he's not representing me anymore? He can't just quit. On whose authority?" A cold click. Then silence. The phone clattered to the floor as Ethan sank into a chair, face buried in his hands. He was finished. Alone. In that soft hush, Emily's heart didn't leap with triumph. It settled. Like a bruise no longer raw but finally healing over. She drew in a breath, yet deep down, a small ache reminded her. Part of her would always hate how much of herself she had wasted on believing he could change. That ghost of old hope would never roar again, but it would sigh sometimes. In dark corners, she would keep locked away. Leonardo turned to Emily. Her expression was calm, not vengeful, not cruel, just a deep, settled rightness, the peace of justice done. "He will reach out," Leonardo said. "He'll beg, threaten, promise you the earth." "It doesn't matter," Emily said softly, resting her palm over her unborn child. "This was never about money. It was about respect, the respect he denied me and our son." She lifted her eyes to the circle of loyal power gathered around her, and the respect he never gave any of you. The last move was the most personal and the sharpest blade. Elena tapped her tablet, bringing up a fresh dossier. Photos, bank records, emails. "Vivian Clark," Elena said, her Russian consonants slicing the air. While warming Ethan's bed, she also maintained a discreet affair with an aging Swiss banking tycoon, a direct rival to Walker Holdings. For 18 months she has funneled him confidential information for a generous fee. Sheikh Rashid gave a low, amused whistle. So the snake beside him was also a spy. Perfect. Elena's eyes glimmered coldly. "We leak it tomorrow." Leonardo spoke softly but with the finality of a judge delivering sentence. After his ruin is total, it's important he sees the full scope of his failure, that the woman he destroyed his family for was in fact an architect of his collapse too. He looked at Emily, a glimmer of satisfaction, a final poetic justice. Emily gave a single, steady nod. The humiliation would be absolute. He had traded a diamond for a shard of glass, and now he would be forced to see it with his own eyes. He hadn't just lost, he had been a fool. And in his world, that was the only unforgivable sin. Dawn bled slowly across Lake Halden, painting the water in ribbons of rose and gold. A cruel, serene beauty mocking the chaos in Ethan Walker's head. He stood alone on the grand terrace of the Ashford estate, not as a victorious groom, but a broken king surveying the ashes of his once untouchable kingdom. Just yesterday this air had pulsed with applause, laughter, and champagne-soaked ambition. Now it was suffocating and stale, heavy with the scent of thousands of wilting lilies and spilled liquor. But the silence was the loudest condemnation, a vast emptiness where worship used to echo. His world hadn't just collapsed, it had been taken apart, piece by silent piece, in under 12 hours. He had spent the night pacing like a rabid animal, raging against invisible bars he hadn't even known were there. His frantic calls to banks, to board members, to senators and cronies, all met the same way. Polite voicemail greetings and curt, formal resignation emails. He flicked on the television in one of the suites and found his own face staring back from a financial news special. The panel of analysts dismantled the story of Walker Holdings with an almost gleeful calm. They used words like hubris, house of cards, narcissistic overreach. They showed footage of him and Vivian's wedding kiss, now replayed as a grotesque punchline to a corporate tragedy. Then, almost tenderly, they cut to an old candid of Emily, serene, thoughtful, far away from the ruin he dragged her into. "The question everyone is asking," the anchor said, voice sharp but curious, "is who is Emily Whitcomb? The quiet wife who, it seems, held all the leverage in the end." And then came the salt in every wound. The leaked affair. The scandal had erupted online hours before dawn, a perfectly packaged tale of betrayal and corporate espionage. He pictured Vivian whispering sweet secrets to his rival over discreet dinners, mocking his ambitions behind his back. The woman he had burned his life down to possess hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been an informant, an eager conspirator in his downfall. She had vanished before midnight, after a vicious argument where she'd called him a fraud and screamed that she should have stayed with the banker. The taste of the irony was acid on his tongue. Now he was truly, irreversibly alone. A disgraced man drifting in the smoldering ruins of his own design. And then he saw it. A single, ordinary black sedan crawling up the long driveway. It wasn't the car of a friend or a last-minute ally. There was nothing flashy about it. It was a vehicle that existed for one purpose: to deliver a message. A man in a crisp, understated suit stepped out. He was no chauffeur, no bodyguard, just a courier, and the final nail. He handed Ethan a thick, cream-colored envelope. His voice was neutral. From the office of Marcus Shaw. Then he turned and left. Job complete. Marcus Shaw. His own lawyer, the bulldog he'd paid a king's ransom to defend him, now acting as an executioner instead. Hands trembling, Ethan broke the wax seal, embossed not with a law firm's mark, but the Whitcomb family's Falcon crest. Inside were divorce papers. But they weren't the papers he had drafted and smugly sent to Emily. These were something else altogether. They weren't a negotiation. They were a declaration. Cold, meticulous, irrefutable. He flipped through the first clauses, and for a flicker of a heartbeat, he almost believed he'd won. She wasn't asking for a penny of his fortune. No alimony, no claim to his frozen assets, no settlement for the worthless stock. A fool's relief bubbled up. Maybe she'd made a mistake. Maybe pride had blinded her. Then he turned the page. Addendum, reclamation of premarital assets, Emily Whitcomb. The name that Leonardo had spoken back in that cursed library. The name that now screamed at him from the fine print. He read on, the blood draining from his face. The list was not some quaint set of paintings and a modest trust fund he'd once patronizingly dismissed when their prenup was signed. It was a portfolio so vast and strategically vital that Ethan felt the air vanish from his lungs. There it was in black and white. A controlling interest in Congolese Mining Group, the company holding exclusive cobalt extraction rights, the lifeblood of Walker Holdings' tech division. He had spent 2 years battling for that supply chain, never suspecting that he had been negotiating with his own wife's ancestral empire all along. Next, a deed to a massive stretch of land in the UAE, the very ground where Sheikh Rashid Al Fulon was constructing a multi-billion-dollar refinery, financed partly by a loan guaranteed by Walker Holdings. That loan was now secured by her land, not his. It kept going. There were seed capital funds that had fueled the startups he later bought at premium prices, trusts that owned patents for the logistical software his logistics branch depended on, silent voting blocks and subsidiaries he thought he owned outright. It was a hidden lattice of power, centuries in the making, woven so quietly beneath his feet that he had mistaken himself for a king when he had only ever been a jester, dancing with borrowed gold. His so-called genius had been leveraging what she had graciously placed in his path. And he, blind, smug, certain, had never thought to ask where his luck came from. Every line on the page was a slap, a bruise pressed into the bone of his pride. She had made him, and now, with a signature and a whisper, she had unmade him. The final pages were the cruelest, the custody terms for their son. The wording was surgical, so cold it burned. No parental rights shall be granted. No visitation permitted. The child's surname will be Whitcomb. A trust, funded solely by the mother's assets, shall provide for the child's upbringing and education in perpetuity. Ethan Walker shall be regarded in the eyes of the law as a donor with no legal standing or claim. It was obliteration. The same erasure he had tried to inflict on her turned back on him with merciless precision. He had tried to discard her and their child. Now, her ancient house had stripped him of his company, his empire, his name, and even his fatherhood. The weight of it crushed him, deeper than any market crash. He had believed himself untouchable. Now he was no one. And the silence of that truth roared louder than any scandal. Miles away, washed in the tender light of morning, Emily stood on the sunlit balcony of Falcon Hollow. She wore a simple linen dress, her hair loose, her expression tranquil. She was a world apart from the shattered woman who once hid beneath a rain-soaked oak tree. Yet under the calm surface, a hidden tremor coiled in her ribs. A quiet fear that when night fell and the walls were silent, her old wounds would whisper back to her, reminding her how deeply betrayal had once cut. She knew victory did not erase every scar, and she would carry them, gracefully, because now she chose to. Leonardo joined her, pressing a steaming cup of herbal tea into her hand, his voice rumbled with quiet certainty. "It is done. He has received the final papers." "And the company?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the clear, endless horizon. "The board accepted our terms, but Marcus Shaw was most persuasive," Leonardo said, his mouth curving in a thin, satisfied line. "Through discreet proxies, the Whitcomb Consortium will acquire what remains, the patents, the viable infrastructure, for a fraction of its worth. We will cleanse it of his corruption, fold it into our enterprises. From its bones we will build something honest, something enduring." He laid a gentle hand on her shoulder, a silent blessing only family could give. He looked at her then, not with pity but with a father's pride. "It will be the foundation of a new legacy, a birthright worthy of your son, a testament to his mother's strength." Emily rested her palm on the gentle curve of her belly, feeling a small flutter of life beneath her touch, a promise of the future she now owned outright. Ethan had ceased to matter long ago. This was for the child she would raise in honor, not in the shadow of a disgraced name. Her phone buzzed where it lay on the stone balustrade, a message from Elena Petrova. It was a single, high-resolution photograph, snapped from a quiet distance. Ethan collapsed on the marble steps of the Ashford estate, the cream-colored envelope clutched limply in his hand. He looked hollow, a ghost rattling around the wreckage of his own ambitions, small and pitiful against the grandeur he once believed was his forever. Emily studied the image for a single, unhurried moment. The man she once loved, the man who had caused her wounds she had thought would never heal. And now, at last, she felt nothing. No rage, no pity, just an endless, clean distance. A part of her mourned not for him, but for the version of herself who had once loved him so blindly. She whispered a silent goodbye to that girl, soft, forgiving, and easily broken. With a calm swipe of her thumb, she deleted the photo forever. He was not even worth her memory now. Below, in the gravel drive, the black Rolls-Royce Phantom idled patiently, its engine a soft promise. Massimo, the faithful butler, stood ready by the open door. It was time. This was not an escape, it was an emergence. She was not going back to hide. She was stepping fully into her place as the matriarch of a house reborn, the guardian of a dynasty. Emily walked towards the car. Her steps were not those of a victim, but of a queen who had ended a foolish man's war and claimed her own peace. She turned her back on the chaos behind her and lifted her face to the wide, clear horizon. The past was closed. The future belonged to her, and to the child she would raise in light, not shadows. The future was hers to command. This is the story of how a single betrayal awakened a sleeping giant. Emily's journey was never just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her power, her true name, and her destiny from a man who had treated her as a decorative afterthought. It's a powerful reminder that the quietest souls often have the deepest roots and the strongest allies. Ethan Walker thought he was the king of his domain. In truth, he was just a pawn in an older, grander game. Emily didn't simply win. She rewrote the rules and claimed the entire board. If Emily's story of hidden strength and ultimate justice captivated you, don't forget to hit like and share this video with someone who loves an epic tale of empowerment. Which twist shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments below. And for more gripping stories of betrayal, drama, and unstoppable comebacks, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's next. Picture this. You walk into the most over-the-top baby shower you've ever seen. Crystal chandeliers sparkling above towers of pastel macarons, designer gift bags at every seat, and a guest list dripping with high society names. But hidden beneath the glitter is a secret ready to explode. The woman throwing this jaw-dropping party isn't the mother-to-be's best friend. She's the millionaire's mistress. And the mother-to-be? Supposedly out of the picture. Until the real pregnant wife storms through those doors, clutching a marriage license that's about to tear every smug lie apart. Welcome to the scandal. Damian Blackwell wasn't born into money. He fought, clawed, and outmaneuvered for it, building his fortune with a ruthless ambition that made him admired and feared in equal measure. Tall, imposing at 6'2", with perfectly styled, jet-black hair, Damian's intensity could charm or terrify, depending on which side of his wealth you found yourself. By age 35, he had transformed a modest real estate venture into a sprawling empire. His name was spoken in whispers at charity galas and top-floor boardrooms alike. Tabloids painted him as a cold-hearted, self-made mogul, while glossy magazines swooned over his image as a visionary powerhouse. Despite endless gossip about his ironclad heart, every social event clamored for his presence, hoping a touch of his Midas luck might rub off. Damian appeared alongside A-list celebrities. Oprah once hosted him for a brief interview, praising him as the real deal. He'd been spotted at a benefit gala next to Bill Gates, quietly discussing global real estate investments. His name alone could open doors, seal deals, and turn heads. But behind the polished surface lay a tangled secret. Damian was married, though very few in his elite circle knew it. And he had a mistress. Her name was Charmaine Delgado, younger, clever, and calculating enough to stand beside him when it counted, yet vanish like a shadow when it suited her. Until the day she chose not to. It all began on an apparently ordinary morning in their Manhattan penthouse. Damian sipped his strong black coffee, eyes flicking over a spreadsheet of new property bids. Charmaine, lounging in silk, flipped through a glossy magazine, her gaze snagging on an article about lavish high-society baby showers. A sly, sparkling idea began to form, one that would soon unravel everything. The quiet truth of Damian's private life was his marriage to Elizabeth Redwood. At 28, Elizabeth radiated a gentle, regal poise. She came from old Boston money. Her father, Jonathan Redwood, was a powerhouse attorney. Her mother, Catherine, a beloved society philanthropist. Unlike Damian, Elizabeth had inherited wealth, but she carried it lightly. She spent her days teaching art to underprivileged children at a non-profit school. Their marriage was discreet, exactly how she liked it. Damian agreed. A low-profile personal life made it easier to shield his empire from prying eyes. Over the years, they'd become an invisible couple, rarely photographed together, rarely seen hand-in-hand at galas. Most people assumed they were close business partners. A handful of confidants knew the truth. Elizabeth was pregnant. She had whispered the secret only to her closest friend, Bella Thompson. They had planned to share the news on their own terms. But Elizabeth's pregnancy was fragile. 2 miscarriages had taught her to be cautious. She spent her days resting quietly at their peaceful Connecticut estate instead of bustling New York. Damian's visits grew more and more rare. He always blamed business trips. Elizabeth, trusting and kind, believed him. She focused on staying healthy, certain that once the baby arrived, the distance between them would close. What she didn't know was that Damian's absences weren't about business at all. He was in Manhattan more often than he admitted, and almost always with Charmaine Delgado draped elegantly on his arm. And while Damian navigated boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations, Charmaine was quietly weaving a scheme that would shake every certainty Elizabeth Redwood held about her marriage. Charmaine Delgado was not a woman who faded into the background. With her chestnut-brown hair styled in glossy waves, a wardrobe of designer labels, and a fierce glint in her hazel eyes, she had clawed her way to the fringes of high society. Rumors whispered that she was Damian's mistress, yet even those who judged her couldn't resist her invitations. Hedge fund wives, influencer darlings, and minor celebrities alike crowded into her candlelit dinner parties, secretly craving her daring sparkle. But being a hidden indulgence wasn't enough. Charmaine's ambition was bolder. She intended to become Mrs. Blackwell. She savored the taste of influence at Damian's side. The hush money, the sly compliments, the exclusive soirees where she was introduced as a close business associate. But stolen weekends in Paris penthouses or summers in secluded Tuscan villas weren't enough anymore. She wanted Elizabeth Redwood out, erased, so she could claim the empire she believed should be hers. "Have you thought about throwing a party?" Charmaine purred one morning. Lounging barefoot on Damian's plush white sofa while Manhattan's skyline gleamed beyond the penthouse windows. "A big one, with the right people. Something everyone will talk about. A fundraiser for your new charity branch, maybe?" Damian barely looked up from a dense financial report, raising an eyebrow. "You know those galas matter, but that's why we have a PR team. I don't need more chaos right now." She pressed on, voice dripping sweetness with an edge of steel. "We need to show the city you're more than a ruthless tycoon, that you care, and you know I'm good at this. Ariana Roswell from Van Cleef said she'd sponsor the jewelry raffle. Think of the headlines." He gave her a dismissive shrug. "I'll think about it, My mind's on locking down a new land deal in Dubai. That's priority one. But Charmaine knew one party wasn't enough to unseat Elizabeth. She needed something far more explosive, something personal. And fate was about to hand her the perfect weapon. Miles away, on the quiet grounds of the Connecticut estate, Elizabeth Redwood was battling another wave of morning sickness. Damian's presence had dwindled to short, polite calls and affectionate but increasingly distant texts. He reassured her with every excuse. Work in Europe, work in Asia, everything would settle down soon. He promised he'd be there when it mattered most. Late one evening, as she lay curled on the velvet chaise in her art studio, a strange ache twisted in her chest. Not from pregnancy, but from something colder. Suspicion. Earlier that day, Bella Thompson had visited with a tray of herbal teas and a string of gossip. Bella had scrolled through her phone, showing Elizabeth photos lifted from Charmaine Delgado's glittering Instagram stories, party snapshots full of candlelight and champagne, and Elizabeth had recognized the view from the penthouse terrace instantly. It was Damian's penthouse. She told herself it meant nothing. Charmaine was a known socialite. The space could be loaned for events. But that raw seed of doubt sprouted roots deep in the quiet of her sprawling, empty house. Elizabeth laid a protective hand on her small bump. A faint kick, life moving inside her, reminded her, "We are a family. Damian loves you. He will come back. I have to trust him." She whispered to the room, "Stress isn't good for the baby." But doubt, once planted, never sleeps, especially when you are alone in echoing rooms once meant to be filled with laughter. One rainy afternoon, while Damian was out taking a call on the penthouse balcony, Charmaine found her opening. She perched on the edge of his desk, idly flipping through his open laptop, and froze. There it was, a message from his assistant, congratulating him on his wife's pregnancy. The words struck like a slap. Charmaine's painted smile cracked. She had always known about Elizabeth, the hidden wife, but a baby changed everything. Jealous rage boiled under her calm veneer. Pacing barefoot across the marble floor, she bit down hard on her glossy lip, muttering, "He's having a child with her. What about me?" But rage soon hardened into something sharper. Opportunity. If Elizabeth's pregnancy was Damian's best-kept secret, then it would become Charmaine's most devastating weapon. If she could worm her way into the baby's life, she might become indispensable, or at the very least, impossible to ignore. And so Charmaine hatched a plan so bold it made her pulse race with wicked delight. She would throw Elizabeth's baby shower herself. On the surface, a generous gesture. In reality, a perfectly staged trap to embarrass the pregnant wife or spark a scene that would ripple through every gossip column in Manhattan. She cornered Damian one evening, draping herself over the back of his armchair as the city lights glittered behind them. "You never do anything big for Elizabeth," she cooed, sweet as honey. "Why don't we celebrate her pregnancy? It'll look wonderful. Everyone will see you're a devoted husband, a family man. The press will love it." Damian stiffened, brow furrowed. "Elizabeth is private. She hates attention. She's staying in Connecticut for a reason. You know she's had complications before. She wouldn't want a spectacle." "Oh, hush," Charmaine pressed, her tone playful but her eyes sharp. "It won't be some circus, just a tasteful, intimate gathering. Only trusted guests. I'll handle every detail discreetly. It'll silence the silly rumors about me and you." Her hand slid onto his shoulder, her smile calculated perfection. "Let me help you show your love for her. It'll prove there's no scandal, just a happy, united family." Damian hesitated. He knew Elizabeth would hate fuss, but the whispers about Charmaine were growing louder, and a polished display of harmony might bury them. He exhaled. "Fine, keep it small. No press." Charmaine's lips curled into a satisfied secret smile the moment he turned away. Within 24 hours, invitations were in the hands of Manhattan's well-manicured elite. She was strategic, a sprinkling of high society women, a handful of Elizabeth's distant acquaintances, but not her closest friends or family. Charmaine wanted full control. News of the hush-hush shower trickled through gossip circles like a forbidden secret. Elizabeth heard about it secondhand, from Bella Thompson, who had received an email invite late one night. "A baby shower hosted by Charmaine Delgado?" Bella repeated, disbelief all over her face as she sat on Elizabeth's sun-dappled porch. Elizabeth's heart lurched. She managed a calm tone when she called Damian that evening. "Why is Charmaine organizing my shower?" she asked, forcing her voice to stay light. Damian's voice, warm but distant, crackled through the line. "I wanted to do something special." Charmaine volunteered. "She has connections. She promised to keep it quiet." "I thought you'd like it. You've been so isolated lately." Elizabeth pressed a hand over her growing belly. Part of her wanted to believe him. Part of her needed to believe him. She murmured, "All right, if you really think it'll be good for us." Behind closed doors, Charmaine orchestrated every detail like a director setting a scene for a scandal. She booked a rooftop terrace atop a skyscraper owned by one of Damian's business partners, a palatial expanse overlooking Central Park. She ordered pastel arrangements in towering crystal vases, orchids and roses flown overnight from Paris, a harpist, a string quartet, trays of delicately plated amuse-bouches. And the cake? 5 tiers, frosted in white chocolate filigree, grand enough for a royal wedding. In her mind, Charmaine pictured her entrance, flawless makeup, a designer gown that dripped sophistication. She'd glide between tables dropping sly comments about Damian's generosity, their long-standing trust, her role in helping him manage personal things. If everything unfolded as planned, Elizabeth would be too stunned, or too humiliated, to fight back. Charmaine would step into the limelight, the beautiful, helpful companion everyone adored. As the date crept closer, Elizabeth felt a gnawing dread she couldn't quiet. 7 months pregnant, bone-tired, she leaned on Bella more than ever. Bella insisted on accompanying her to Manhattan, refusing to let her face Charmaine alone. They arrived the night before, checked into a luxury hotel suite Damian had booked, but he was absent. Instead, a short handwritten note waited on the marble coffee table. "Forgive me, darling. Urgent business dinner. I'll see you tomorrow. D." Elizabeth sank into the plush sofa, tears burning behind her eyes. She pressed her palm to her belly, feeling the reassuring flutter of tiny kicks. Bella handed her a glass of sparkling water, her tone gentle but edged with protectiveness. "Damian's keeping his distance again. Lizzie, do you still trust him?" Elizabeth's eyes shimmered as she blinked hard. "I'm trying. I have to try. He swears he loves me. He says this baby will bring us closer. But Charmaine, she's everywhere. She's always there." Bella pulled her close, rubbing her shoulder. "Tomorrow, you'll see for yourself. Sometimes you have to look the truth in the eye, and if you need me to step in, I will." That night, Elizabeth lay awake in the dim hotel suite, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside her chest, her heart thudded out an anxious question she couldn't silence. What will I find tomorrow? She thought of her father's disapproving silence every time Damian's name came up. How her mother, in gentle but pointed words, once warned that Damian's restless ambition might not fit within the walls of a peaceful marriage. Elizabeth had defended him fiercely back then, insisting he was driven, not unfaithful. Now, standing on the edge of this carefully staged spectacle, her deepest fears clawed at her chest. What if Charmaine Delgado was more than just a helpful business contact? Late morning sunlight bathed the rooftop terrace in a warm, almost cruel golden glow. Waitstaff in crisp white uniforms glided between guests with trays of sparkling juice, flutes of champagne, and delicate hors d'oeuvres. The decor was a pastel daydream. Ribbons of blush pink, mint, and lavender curled around towering arches of roses and greenery. A harpist's soft notes floated through the air, masking the low buzz of gossip. And then Charmaine arrived, a vision in a sleek mauve cocktail dress, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat. Heads turned as she made her entrance, beaming at Manhattan's most inquisitive eyes, playing the part of the gracious hostess to perfection. She leaned in close to socialites and whispered conspiratorial asides that made them giggle and glance slyly toward the door, waiting for the wife. After a tense elevator ride, Elizabeth finally stepped onto the terrace, Bella at her side. For a split second, the hum of conversation stalled. Faces turned, murmurs floated on the breeze, admiration laced with speculation. Elizabeth wore a flowing cream gown that skimmed her swollen belly. Despite the twisting unease inside her, she stood tall, one hand protectively cupping the life growing within her. Charmaine glided forward, arms wide, smile painted with careful calculation. "Elizabeth, darling, I'm so thrilled you could make it." Her tone dripped false warmth as she leaned in to kiss the air near Elizabeth's cheek. "I've been dying to meet you in person." Elizabeth forced a polite smile that didn't reach her wary eyes. Thank you for hosting. It's lovely. I just had to honor the mother of Damian's child, Charmaine said sweetly, her lips curling into a barely hidden smirk. He's told me so much about you. We simply must chat later, once you've greeted all these wonderful people. Elizabeth's gaze drifted over the terrace. Elegant women she barely knew, none of her closest friends, few familiar faces. It felt like stepping into enemy territory wearing a crown she hadn't asked for. In the far corner, a knot of overdressed guests whispered behind manicured hands, their eyes darting to Elizabeth and back to Charmaine. Rumors had clearly beaten her here. She felt the sting of being pitied and dissected in real time. And Damian? Still nowhere in sight. An hour in, Elizabeth did her best to endure it. She smiled through compliments, opened ribbon boxes of baby clothes, thanked strangers for their blessings. She could feel Bella's protective gaze on her at all times, a silent anchor in the swirl of subtle mockery. Finally, Bella touched her elbow gently. Lizzie, sit down, you look pale. Elizabeth sank into a plush seat as a waiter set a glass of ice water in her trembling hand. She pressed the rim to her lips, praying her stomach would settle. Before she could catch her breath, Charmaine appeared again, this time towing Harriet Mallister in her wake. Harriet was infamous in Manhattan's glitter-soaked gossip scene. Her byline sold tabloids filled with tales of infidelity and scandal that ruined reputations overnight. Elizabeth, darling, Charmaine purred, her grin as sharp as glass. This is Harriet. She'd love a quick word with you about your plans after the baby comes. She's a dear friend and writes the most adorable features on society families. Elizabeth's throat tightened. She knew Harriet's style. Secrets turned to headlines, polite quotes twisted into scandal. With a polite nod, she extended her hand. A pleasure, Miss Mallister. Harriet's smile was too wide, her lipstick too perfect. Oh, the pleasure is mine. My readers adore an exclusive peek into the life of someone as mysterious as you. Will you continue your charitable work once the little one arrives? Elizabeth steadied her breath, reminding herself she had nothing to hide. Of course, helping children through art education is what I love most. That won't change. Harriet's eyes flicked to Charmaine, hungry for more. And how has Miss Delgado helped you prepare for motherhood? You two must be so close to pull off such a gorgeous day. Elizabeth's heart thudded painfully. She forced a gracious answer. She's kindly arranged the shower. It's very thoughtful of her. Charmaine's eyes glittered with mean triumph. She hooked her arm around Harriet's shoulders, leaning in conspiratorially. Damian trusts me completely with these intimate details. We've collaborated on so much together, haven't we, Elizabeth? A sour wave of nausea rolled through Elizabeth's body. She wanted to stand up and scream. This is not your place. This is my family. But the harp played on, the guests watched, and her baby shifted inside her like a gentle plea to stay calm. She just smiled, porcelain perfect, as Harriet's eyes gleamed, sensing the fracture lines that would make tomorrow's headline irresistible. Well, I look forward to writing something wonderful, Harriet purred, her voice dripping with the promise of scandal. As she drifted away to hunt fresh gossip, Charmaine leaned in closer to Elizabeth, her breath sweet and poisonous. Her lips curved into a mocking grin. You must be so worn out. Are you sure you can handle all this attention, dear? Elizabeth met her eyes squarely, refusing to flinch. I'm fine. I just hope Damian arrives soon. This is, after all, our baby shower. Charmaine's brows lifted, amusement dancing in her eyes like a secret fire. Oh, he'll be here, she murmured, with a glimmer of satisfaction. He wouldn't miss this for the world. Across the terrace, Bella caught Elizabeth's gaze, worry clear in her eyes. Both women could feel it. Charmaine hadn't yet played her final hand. By mid-afternoon, a ripple of murmurs spread like an electric current through the rooftop garden. Damian Blackwell had arrived. He strode in flanked by two of his sleek-suited partners, looking every bit the unstoppable tycoon, though the rigid set of his jaw betrayed strain beneath the polished exterior. Elizabeth rose, smoothing her gown, her pulse fluttering like a trapped bird in her chest. She stepped forward as he bent down, pressing a fleeting kiss to her cheek. You look beautiful, he whispered, but his eyes flicked over her shoulder toward the crowd, searching for threats he could not name. She forced a brittle smile. Thank you. Before she could say more, Charmaine swept in, slipping between them like silk and shadows. She draped her arms around Damian's neck in a hug that lingered just long enough to make onlookers shift uncomfortably. Elizabeth's throat tightened. Some guests looked away, pretending not to watch. Others devoured every detail. Damian cleared his throat, voice stiff. "Charmaine, you've done an incredible job. It's beautiful." Charmaine beamed, turning to the guests with a radiant flourish. "Only the best for your wife," she said, biting off the word as though it tasted bitter on her tongue. Then she raised her champagne flute, commanding the garden's attention, like a star stepping onto stage lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice dripping sweetness and threat in equal measure. "May I have a moment? We have a very special surprise for Elizabeth and Damian today." Two servers wheeled out a towering cake, layers of sugar roses cascading down pale pink fondant, crowned by a gleaming gold bee for baby Blackwell. Gasps and polite applause rippled through the crowd. Charmaine clutched her glass dramatically. "This baby marks a new chapter in the Blackwell legacy. We all know Damian as a man of ruthless ambition, but behind every powerful man is a woman even stronger. Elizabeth," her eyes glittered with a wolf smile, "you carry his pride and joy, his future heir." Elizabeth braced herself, palms damp against her gown. For a breath, Charmaine's words sounded harmless, almost supportive. Then her gaze darted to Harriet Mallister, lingering in the crowd, notebook in hand, ready to scribble down the ruin of someone's life. "And sometimes," Charmaine's tone turned soft, too soft, "the true test of love is how we survive the storms that threaten us. So let's raise a glass, to love, to loyalty, and to a future that may reshape the entire Blackwell empire." A hush swept the terrace. Glasses lifted. Damian's face was stone, but a muscle twitched near his jaw. "To family," Charmaine declared, eyes locked on Elizabeth's, daring her to break. Crystal flutes clinked together like fragile bones. The harpist played a trembling melody as if to cover the tremor running through the garden. When the cake was finally cut, guests drifted back into murmuring circles of speculation. Bella slipped beside Elizabeth, pressing a crisp envelope into her palm. "Lizzie, this came for you at the hotel, by courier. It's from your father." Hands trembling, Elizabeth unfolded the document. Her eyes darted over lines of dry legal language that turned to knives with every word. A detailed report from her father's attorney. Shell corporations, luxury apartments in Paris, high-end jewelry bought for Charmaine, hush money masked as consulting fees. It wasn't rumor anymore. It was truth, spelled out in ink her father had discreetly uncovered to protect his daughter in a world where secrets were currency. Tears prickled behind Elizabeth's lashes. But rage burned brighter than grief. She turned to Bella, who squeezed her hand. "Are you ready?" Bella whispered. Elizabeth's voice was steel, wrapped in silk. "Yes, now." She left Bella behind and wove through the oblivious guests. Near the bar, Damian stood alone, swirling whiskey, phone buzzing unanswered beside him. He looked up, startled, as she thrust the papers into his hands. "Damian," she said, her voice cracking but strong. "What is this?" He scanned the first page, blood draining from his face. "Elizabeth, I can explain." She cut him off, fury tearing through her composure. "Explain how you're buying apartments and diamonds for her while I wait for you at home, pregnant with your child? How many lies have I swallowed? How many fake business trips while you were in her bed?" He reached for her hand, but she wrenched away. "It's complicated. I was trying to protect you. The baby, my deals, alliances," he stammered. Elizabeth's eyes burned like glass catching sunlight. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You used me," Elizabeth choked out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I carried your child, dreamed of us as a family, and all this time you were building a life with her." The words fell like a stone into the hush that had settled over the rooftop. Guests nearby stiffened, pretending not to listen, but the shocked glances gave them away. Across the terrace, Charmaine watched the unfolding scene with a predator's patience, her lips curving into the faintest, cruelest smile. Damian's mouth opened, but no words came. The weight of exposure pressed down on him until he looked smaller than he ever had in his power suit. Elizabeth turned away, blinded by tears. She could barely breathe, ready to flee, until Charmaine chose her moment to twist the knife. She swept forward, her voice dripping fake concern. "Elizabeth, sweetheart, is something wrong? You look flushed." Maybe all this is too much for you? Elizabeth whirled, her grief combusting into rage. Don't sweetheart me. You know exactly what you've done. Damian hovered helplessly as Charmaine turned, addressing the guests with a placating wave of her manicured hand. Please everyone, let's give the couple some privacy. We're all family here, aren't we? After all. She lowered her voice just enough for the crowd to lean in. This is Damian's baby we're celebrating, right? Elizabeth's breath caught in her throat. You have no right to stand here and talk about my marriage. Charmaine's eyes sparkled with unholy delight. I hate to be the bearer of more shocking news, darling, but you might want to brace yourself. She splayed her palm dramatically over her flat stomach. I'm pregnant too. A collective gasp rippled through the guests, echoing off the marble pillars. For a heartbeat, the rooftop was silent, but for the distant hum of the city below. Elizabeth stared, frozen, as the word pregnant thundered through her brain. Her vision blurred, her knees threatened to buckle. Across the terrace, Harriet Mallister was already thumb-typing furiously into her phone, her eyes glittering with tabloid glee. Damian's face went deathly pale. Charmaine, you promised. Charmaine's smirk widened as she flipped her hair over her shoulder. I changed my mind. You can't hide me anymore, Damian. Not when I'm carrying your child too. Everyone deserves the truth. Elizabeth swayed on her feet. Bella lunged forward, steadying her. The storm of murmurs around them rose to a fever pitch. For a heartbeat, it all spun too fast. The betrayal, the baby, the stairs. Then Elizabeth felt something deep and iron-hard lock into place inside her. She drew a breath that scraped her lungs raw, then stood straighter than she had all day. Deliberately, she reached into her small clutch and pulled out 2 pieces of paper, crisp, official, and deadly. She held them high so the crowd could see. Enough, she said, her voice ringing clear and sharp over the gossiping hisses. You think you can stand here at my baby shower in my life and pretend you have a rightful claim to my husband? Let's clarify something for all of you right now. She unfolded the pages, their marriage license and a certified copy of their wedding certificate. The state seal glimmered in the waning sunlight. I am Mrs. Elizabeth Redwood Blackwell, legally. Fully. And none of your pathetic games change that. This is our marriage and our baby, not yours. A ripple of shocked silence shivered across the rooftop. Charmaine's mask cracked for half a second before she caught herself sneering through the sting. Oh, legally married, how quaint. But you can't erase this bond. She tapped her stomach with a flourish. I'm carrying his child too. That's a connection you can't just tear up with a piece of paper, sweetheart. Elizabeth's tears dried into an icy blaze of fury. Get out of my face. Damian tried to step between them, his voice strained, pleading. Both of you, stop this. This isn't the place. Elizabeth rounded on him, her voice shaking but deadly clear. Not the place. Damian, you let your mistress plan my baby shower. You let her humiliate me in front of everyone we know. And now you dare tell me this is not the place? He reached for her hand. She jerked back as if scorched. The air snapped taut with every stunned pair of eyes watching. Harriet's phone was practically glued to her fingers, capturing every breath. Some guests drifted quietly away, desperate to escape the scandal. Others stayed riveted, unable to look away from the implosion of the perfect Blackwell fairy tale. Elizabeth pressed a protective hand to her belly, feeling the baby flutter in confused distress. Bella was at her elbow in an instant. Lizzie, we need to go. Right now. Charmaine tilted her head, her voice a venomous purr. Oh, poor darling Elizabeth. Next time, maybe pick a husband who knows how to keep his vows. Elizabeth trembled, her fury trembling on the edge of violence. If I weren't pregnant, I'd slap that smug look off your face. Bella's eyes flashed. You won't, but I swear to God, I will if you don't move. She wrapped her arm protectively around Elizabeth's shoulders. Come on, Lizzie. Let's get out of this circus. This isn't worth risking your health, Bella murmured firmly, wrapping an arm around Elizabeth's trembling shoulders. Together they made their exit, the stunned crowd parting in tense silence to let the betrayed wife pass, her head high, though tears blurred her eyes. Behind them, Charmaine's lips curved into a satisfied smirk, like a queen savoring her coup. But what she didn't grasp yet was that her little victory had just lit a fuse that would scorch them all. Damian stood frozen for a heartbeat, torn between chasing after Elizabeth or staying behind to contain Charmaine's chaos. Instinct 1, he turned and pushed through the crowd after his wife, leaving Charmaine marooned in a garden of scandalized whispers and Harriet Mallister's greedy camera lens. Before dusk, Manhattan's gossip machine roared to life. Cryptic social posts hinted at a baby shower gone up in flames. Never seen a party end like that. Harriet teased an explosive exposé to her thousands of eager followers. By midnight, Pash's Blackwell scandal was trending. Back in the penthouse suite, Elizabeth was inconsolable. She had locked herself in the bedroom, leaving Bella pacing the suite like a guard dog, blocking Damian's path when he finally arrived, breathless and desperate. "Bella, please, I have to explain. Let me talk to her." Bella's eyes flashed like a shield of steel. "Explain what? How you let your mistress plan your wife's baby shower? How you lied to her face for months?" "Damian, enough. You've done enough." Behind the door, a soft, broken voice called out, "Bella, let him in. I need to hear it. All of it." Reluctantly, Bella stepped aside. Damian slipped into the dim room, his polished shoes silent on the carpet. Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, hair disheveled, a box of tissues at her side. He sank to one knee before her, trying to find her eyes. "Lizzie, I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this." Her voice cracked like a whip. "Is she really pregnant?" He faltered. "She says she is, but I haven't seen any proof. She blindsided me too." "I swear I never meant for this to happen." Elizabeth laughed, a small, broken sound that carried no joy. "So maybe she is. Maybe while I was lying awake praying not to lose this baby, you were busy creating another one with her." He reached for her hand, but she flinched back, hugging her belly protectively. "There's no excuse," he whispered hoarsely. "I was lonely. I was under pressure, traveling. We drifted apart and she was just there. I failed you, Lizzie. I failed us. I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making this right if you'll let me." She lifted her eyes and he flinched at the raw betrayal shining there. "Right now," she said, voice steady despite the tears, "I need space. I need to protect my baby. Our baby. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again." Bella reappeared, her tone cool as she stepped forward. "She needs rest, Damian. You should go." Damian rose, the truth of what he was losing crashing down like an avalanche. He reached for Elizabeth one last time. "Lizzie, I love you. I love our child. I'll do anything." Her shoulders shook as she turned her face away. "Just leave." While Elizabeth tried to gather the shattered pieces of her heart, Charmaine reveled in the storm she'd unleashed. In her luxury apartment, she lounged on a velvet chaise, champagne flute in hand, scrolling gleefully through gossip blogs. Headlines screamed, "Millionaire real estate mogul faces baby shower meltdown. 2 women, 1 man, 1 scandal." Grainy photos captured Elizabeth mid-shout, her wedding certificate clutched like a sword. Another shot caught Charmaine's triumphant smirk, immortalized for millions to judge. She sipped her champagne, savoring every ping of her buzzing phone, until it rang with an unexpected name, Gerald Anderson. One of Damian's oldest, most respected business allies. Charmaine answered with a syrupy purr. "Gerald, darling, calling to congratulate me on my big reveal?" Gerald's tone was arctic. "Charmaine, you've made a public spectacle, and you've dragged Damian's name through the filth with you. The board is furious. Do you understand the damage you've done? Investors in Asia are pulling back already. We could lose billions." Charmaine rolled her eyes, twirling a lock of hair. "Please. Everyone loves a scandal. The headlines will fade. Damian's name will survive. It always does." Gerald's voice hardened like granite. "Not this time. This stunt might cost us partnerships that took years to secure. And you're not untouchable, Charmaine. Keep pushing this circus and you'll be facing legal action. I strongly advise you to disappear quietly while you still can." Charmaine's smile vanished, her fingers tightening around the crystal stem. "Legal action? For carrying his baby? Don't be absurd, Gerald." But for the first time all night, unease coiled in her gut like a snake. "I have my own resources, Gerald. Damian won't let anything happen to me or the baby." Charmaine sneered into the phone, her confidence dripping through the line. Gerald's humorless laugh sliced back. "You're naive if you think he'll sacrifice his entire empire to shield you from the fallout you caused. My advice? Handle this quietly, and pray Elizabeth doesn't drag you through court. You'd be torn apart. You can't win." Before she could fire back, the line went dead. Charmaine's triumphant smirk faltered. For the first time, icy dread slipped through her spine. She realized, too late, that for all her cunning, she might have picked a fight with people far more ruthless than she could ever hope to be. Still, she refused to bend. If she really was pregnant, she would squeeze every drop of advantage out of it. Damian would have to choose her. Eventually. Days turned into a week. The scandal didn't die, it metastasized. Media outlets that usually tiptoed around Manhattan's elite ran salacious headlines day after day. Online forums dissected every angle, from Elizabeth's tear-streaked defiance to Charmaine's smirking reveal. Damian's name, once synonymous with power, became gossip fodder. Stocks in his flagship ventures dipped as investors second-guessed his judgment. In Connecticut, Elizabeth tried to find a fragment of peace. She spent hours locked away in her art studio, and pouring her heartbreak onto canvas. Stormy blues and savage streaks of orange that told stories she could never say aloud. Bella never left her side, hovering with herbal teas, warm meals, and gentle reminders to rest for the baby's sake. One cloudy afternoon, her father, Jonathan Redwood, arrived unannounced. Tall, composed, and usually stoic, he looked at his daughter and saw the devastation hidden behind her poised facade. At the sight of him, Elizabeth broke. She ran into his arms, sobbing like the little girl who once believed her father could fix anything. He cradled her head, voice low and fierce. "I'm here now, Lizzie. No one, not Damian, not that woman, will break you again. We'll fix this." Between gasps, she told him everything. The shower, Charmaine's smug bombshell, the humiliation that had cracked open her trust like glass. Jonathan listened, fury burning behind his steel-gray eyes. When she finished, he held her shoulders firm. "Enough about him for now. Think of your future, not just his lies. You have your own wealth, your trust, and you have us. If you want out, you'll get out. We'll protect you and the baby. You don't need him." Her lips trembled. "I still love him, Dad. But I don't know if love is enough. He betrayed me. If he won't change, if I can't trust him, I have to put this baby first." He squeezed her hand, his voice unwavering. "And your mother and I stand behind you. We'll talk to the best lawyers, prepare everything you might need. Custody, settlement, protection. But the final choice is yours, Lizzie. Take your time. You don't have to rush." For the first time in days, Elizabeth felt the tiniest flicker of strength inside her broken heart. She might have lost faith in Damian, but she had not lost herself. She had her own name, her own power, and a family that would never let her stand alone. Meanwhile, Damian was scrambling to stop the bleeding. He spent endless hours barricaded in glass conference rooms with crisis PR teams and stone-faced business partners. They drafted carefully worded statements pleading for privacy, but the tabloids devoured every rumor and spit out new ones daily. He left dozens of voicemails for Elizabeth. She rarely answered, and when she did, her voice was calm but distant. Her words clipped to short updates about doctor's appointments and nothing more. One overcast afternoon, desperation overcame caution. Damian canceled his calls, ignored his phone, and drove 2 hours to Connecticut without warning. He found Elizabeth in the backyard garden, hands dusty from tending to the hydrangeas she had planted when they first moved in as newlyweds. She looked up as he approached. Her eyes were tired but steady, not the eyes of the broken wife he had hoped to pacify, but of a mother ready to protect her child at any cost. Bella, spotting him, silently slipped inside to give them space, but not far enough to miss a single word. Damian cleared his throat, his voice cracking at the edges. "Lizzie, I know you asked for space, but I had to see you. I needed to say this face to face." She brushed the dirt from her hands, her tone calm and razor-sharp. "Let me guess, the board wants me to forgive you, so the scandal dies down. Investors hate drama, don't they?" He winced. "They do, but that's not why I'm here. This isn't about them. It's about us. About our baby. I was a fool, Lizzie. I let Charmaine get too close. I thought I could manage it, but I lost control. I ruined everything that mattered. And if she really is pregnant, I'll handle it. I swear, I will." Elizabeth stared at him, 1,000 memories warring in her mind. Wedding vows, quiet nights after miscarriages, the promise he would always protect her. Her voice trembled. "How, Damian? How do you handle it? You humiliated me, lied to my face. You might have a child with another woman. How do we come back from that?" He stepped closer, eyes shining with regret. By remembering who we were before her. Before all this, by fighting for it, Lizzie, we survived worse together. Don't let her destroy us. Tears blurred her vision. Part of her still wanted to believe him, but her heart had learned better. I can't pretend this didn't happen. I can't wave away the betrayal. If you want me, us, you'll have to prove it. I won't raise this baby in chaos. You don't get to walk in and out. It's all or nothing, Damian. All or nothing. He nodded, voice breaking as his eyes filled. Then it's all. I promise, Lizzie. I swear to God, it's all. I understand. Whatever it takes, I'll do it, Damian vowed, voice tight with desperation. I'll cut Charmaine out of my life if that's what you want. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, the steel in her gaze leaving no room for illusions. And if she's pregnant with your child? You can't just abandon that responsibility, Damian. He winced, shame etched in every line of his face. I won't abandon the child. I'll provide for them. But that doesn't mean I have to be with her. You are my family, you and our baby. Her throat tightened painfully. Then show me. Prove it. Because if this is just another pretty lie to buy time, Damian, I swear to you, I will walk away for good. A week later, a private confrontation was arranged. Neutral ground, no press, no hidden cameras. Elizabeth demanded undeniable proof of Charmaine's claim before making any decision about her marriage. Charmaine, never one to back down from theatrics, agreed eagerly, no doubt savoring the chance to parade her hold over Damian in front of his betrayed wife. They gathered at Gerald Anderson's stately townhouse on the Upper East Side. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Old money decor, polished floors, and a tension sharp enough to snap bone. Elizabeth arrived with Bella and her father, Jonathan Redwood, an imposing figure whose mere presence said this ends on my daughter's terms. Damian sat stiffly between two of his corporate attorneys. Charmaine swept in last, flanked by her own entourage, including a slick celebrity lawyer known for spinning scandals into dollar signs. Jonathan's voice, calm but commanding, cut through the room. We are here for one thing, to confirm if Miss Delgado is truly carrying Mr. Blackwell's child. If so, we will discuss responsibilities and secure arrangements. If not, we pursue every legal remedy for defamation and emotional harm. Charmaine crossed her legs elegantly, her fitted designer dress hugging a barely noticeable bump. She tossed her hair back with a disdainful scoff. How dare you threaten me? I have every right to claim what's mine. One of Damian's lawyers leaned forward, voice clipped. We have an impartial physician ready to conduct an ultrasound and collect a blood sample. You agreed to this condition, Miss Delgado. Charmaine's jaw tightened. I want my own doctor, someone I trust. Jonathan shook his head slowly, his eyes cold steel. No, neutral doctor, or you walk away branded a liar. If you refuse, we'll assume your entire claim is fabricated. Charmaine's eyes darted to Damian, pleading, but his response was a weary, resigned sigh. Charmaine, I need proof. You left me no choice. She bristled but forced a nonchalant shrug. Fine, test me. But when it comes back positive, remember you humiliated me for nothing. They moved to a private study, where a discreet physician waited. Under watchful eyes, Charmaine lay back, trying to look unfazed as cold gel was spread across her abdomen. The ultrasound screen flickered to life, and there it was. A small but undeniable embryo, heartbeat flickering at about 9 weeks. The hush in the room deepened, heavy as lead. Elizabeth's vision blurred with hot tears. One slid down her cheek before she could wipe it away. Damian's shoulders sagged, a quiet sound of regret escaping him. Charmaine's triumphant smirk returned, sharp as a dagger. Told you. Back in the grand parlor, the doctor spoke plainly. Miss Delgado is pregnant, approximately 9 weeks along. A paternity test will follow, but she states Mr. Blackwell is the father. Elizabeth's legs felt rooted to the floor. Her mind spun. The reality, brutal and raw, pressed into her chest until it hurt to breathe. She excused herself quietly, slipping out into the walled garden behind the townhouse. A soft fountain burbled over stone, masking her ragged breaths. She clutched her belly, the child she'd fought so hard to carry, and let silent tears fall into the gravel path. She sensed him before she heard him. Damian's voice cracked in the hush. Lizzie? She turned, eyes blazing through her tears. You've shackled me to a lifetime of sharing you with her, and a child that's not mine. Do you even understand how cruel this is? His hand trembled as he reached for hers. I know, and I can't undo it. But I swear to you, I will own this mistake. I will prove to you, every day, that my life is with you. Only you." A sob tore from her throat. The baby kicked gently inside her, as if to remind her what mattered now. "I will not raise my child in chaos, Damian. I won't share my marriage with a second family. If you want this to work, fix it. Handle Charmaine. Take care of that child, but don't you dare drag her drama into my home. I'm staying in Connecticut. I'll decide when or if you're allowed back in." He nodded, eyes wet. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, Lizzie. Whatever it takes." Together, they stepped back into the parlor, where Charmaine lounged with a cat-like grin, tapping her bump like a trophy she'd already claimed. Smugly, Charmaine tossed her hair over her shoulder, but Jonathan Redwood's ice-cold stare wiped away any illusion that she held the power in that room. "We'll be in touch about legal arrangements," he said, each word like a gavel strike. "Until then, do not contact my daughter directly. Any communication goes through me or her attorneys." Charmaine's lips curved into a faux, innocent pout. "Damian, you know how to reach me, especially when you need updates about our child's appointments." Elizabeth's heart clenched, but she refused to let Charmaine see the pain twist her face. Without another word, she turned and walked out, Bella and her father flanking her like sentinels. Damian lingered behind, a ghost of desperation shadowing his eyes. But the lines were drawn. There would be no more hiding. As soon as Harriet Mallister sniffed out Charmaine's confirmed pregnancy, the story blew sky-high. Tabloids rolled out screaming headlines. Millionaire's double life, wife and mistress both pregnant. Late-night hosts cracked jokes at Damian's expense. Comment sections split between sympathy for Elizabeth and scathing ridicule for Damian's reckless betrayal. In Connecticut, Elizabeth shut off her phone for days at a time. She poured her turmoil into her art, canvases blooming with furious strokes of indigo and crimson. Bella never left her side, guarding her peace against the circling press. Meanwhile, Jonathan Redwood quietly marshaled a small army of divorce lawyers, real estate experts, and crisis managers. He wanted every option ready, from a clean break to a scorched earth legal battle, whatever his daughter chose when the time came. For his part, Damian clung to the scraps of his marriage. He severed personal contact with Charmaine, routing everything through his attorneys. He offered to set up a trust for her child, but avoided her entirely otherwise, desperate to prove to Elizabeth that he meant what he'd promised. It wasn't enough to stop the business damage. Investors, rattled by the scandal, threatened to back out of an expansion deal in Asia. Damian spent sleepless nights in tense video calls, trying to reassure partners that he was still the stable genius they'd banked on. Charmaine, ever hungry for attention, posed at charity luncheons, her small bump wrapped in couture. She gave Harriet a drippingly sympathetic interview, casting herself as the tragic other woman who fell in love with the wrong man, hinting coyly that Damian might yet choose her if Elizabeth left. Beneath the public bravado, though, she quietly worried about the Redwoods' legal iron fist. As Elizabeth neared her 8th month, her doctor warned that her stress was pushing dangerous levels. So, for the sake of her unborn baby, she made her choice, clarity, even if it hurt. She summoned Damian to Connecticut one last time. They sat in the sunroom, afternoon light spilling through the tall windows like warmth Elizabeth barely felt. She wore a simple linen dress that did nothing to hide the round swell of her belly. Damian, looking older than his years and stripped of his usual polish, sat across from her. Bella remained in the corner, silent, watchful. Elizabeth spoke first. Her voice was soft, but each word landed like a hammer. "I've had time to think. My father is ready to help me file for divorce the second I say it's over. But I don't want to decide in anger. I don't want to regret ripping apart my child's family out of spite." Damian sat frozen, hands clasped like a man praying for mercy. She continued, steady despite the tremor in her throat. "I love you. I always have. But I will not live a life where I'm humiliated. If I stay, Charmaine is out of our life, entirely. Except for what's legally necessary for her child. She doesn't come to birthdays. She doesn't step foot in our home. Do you understand me?" Damian's eyes filled, his voice breaking as he answered. "I swear, Lizzie, I'll do whatever you want. She will never touch our family again. I'll provide for her child because I have to, but you and our baby are my only home. Always." Her lips quivered, but she forced her shoulders back. If she turns this ugly, and she will, I'm gone. I will not raise my child in constant scandal and chaos. If you want this marriage, you prove it every single day. One more lie, Damian, and I will never look back. He slid off the chair, kneeling before her swollen belly. He pressed a hand to where their daughter kicked softly beneath the linen. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. "Thank you for giving me this chance to be a man worthy of you both." Tears slipped down Elizabeth's cheeks. She laid her trembling hand over his. "Don't waste it." A month later, the contractions came like an ocean wave in the middle of the night. Bella sped them to the hospital, calling Damian on the way. He dropped a bored call mid-sentence, racing through city traffic to reach them before the baby came. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the maternity ward, Elizabeth labored for hours, her cries echoing down the sterile corridor. Damian held her hand when she let him, murmuring apologies she barely heard through the pain. Finally, a strong, healthy cry split the quiet dawn. A baby girl, pink and perfect, a new beginning, wrapped in hospital blankets. Damian's tears fell unchecked as he cradled her for the first time. "Thank you," he whispered, voice ragged with gratitude and shame. "Thank you for her. Thank you for forgiving me enough to let me be here." Elizabeth, exhausted, managed a small, shaky smile as she let him brush a reverent kiss to her forehead. For that fragile moment, they were simply mother and father, the wreckage of the past pressed back by the tiny heartbeat between them. Damian stayed by her side through long nights and early mornings, doting on their baby girl with a devotion that made Elizabeth's chest ache with conflicting emotions. Bella and Jonathan Redwood visited often, their presence a silent shield against prying eyes and pushy reporters. Outside, the media buzzed, desperate for new details, but the hospital's strict privacy and the Redwood name ensured that Elizabeth's little family could heal in peace. Cradling her daughter in the quiet hours, Elizabeth felt warmth spread through her ribs like sunlight after a storm. She had hope and a fierce determination that no scandal, no mistress, no betrayal would touch this innocent child she held in her arms. Sometimes she would watch Damian rock their daughter to sleep, his dark hair brushing her tiny face, their baby's small fingers curled around his thumb. And for fleeting moments they looked like any other family, untouched by gossip columns and betrayal. But reality always pressed at the edges. Charmaine was still out there, nearing her own due date, carrying another child that shared Damian's DNA. That truth weighed on Elizabeth's heart, even as she whispered lullabies to her baby girl. When she was strong enough, Elizabeth made a decision. She would move back to the Connecticut estate for good, far from Manhattan's whispers and the paparazzi's relentless lenses. Damian agreed without argument. He commuted daily, spending more nights under the same roof as his wife than in his penthouse in the city. Every dinner he made it home in time for, every diaper he changed, every midnight feeding he helped with. Each one rebuilt a little of the trust she'd thought dead. Legally, Charmaine's baby was acknowledged through airtight documents. She received a generous allowance, full medical coverage, and a trust fund for the child's future. But no more. She tried at first to push for more. Lunches with Damian, shared doctor visits, a co-parenting photo opportunity that kept her relevant. Elizabeth refused. Damian, too, held the line, letting his lawyers handle it all. The only voice Charmaine heard from him was a polite, neutral tone on brief calls about the baby's health. Watching from her luxury apartment, Charmaine seethed. This wasn't the story she'd planned. The tragic mistress who won the man in the end, flaunting a powerful family tie. Instead, she became little more than an afterthought, well-funded but alone. A footnote to a marriage she could neither ruin nor replace. For Elizabeth, life settled into a fragile new normal. The days were a rhythm of feedings and naps, stolen kisses with Damian, and quiet moments in her art studio, where she painted away the residue of heartbreak. Every time Damian returned from the city faithful and transparent, it was a small victory. She still wasn't sure she could ever fully forgive him. But she loved him enough to keep trying. Seasons changed. The tabloids, always hungry for fresh scandal, eventually moved on to new targets. The explosive headlines about the Blackwells faded into old gossip. Charmaine gave birth to a healthy boy, and once the cameras lost interest, faded into private life too. Late at night, In the soft lamplight of their elegant living room, Elizabeth sometimes caught Damian watching her. His eyes held gratitude, regret, and a silent promise she prayed he would never break again. Their marriage was no fairy tale. Trust was a tender vine, fragile and constantly needing care. But they had chosen to nurture it together. So, that's how this story comes to an end, my wonderful friends. You're still here with me, right? If you've stayed until this very moment, I know something in Emily's journey has touched your heart. Maybe in a place you didn't expect. You see, what this story really whispers to all of us is simple but fierce. You do not have to stay small just because someone tries to erase you. Pain can bend you, but it doesn't have to break you. As the Stoics remind us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius knew what Emily learned. That your dignity, your truth, your peace, no one gets to take that without your permission. Emily's fall was real. Her betrayal cut deep. But she rose not by seeking revenge alone, but by reclaiming the parts of herself she had once hidden for love. And maybe that's the hardest part for us too. To remember that losing people who don't value us is not the tragedy. Staying lost from ourselves is. So wherever you are tonight, maybe curled up in bed, maybe washing dishes, maybe fighting back tears, know this. Like Emily, you are more than the lies someone tells about you. You are more than the heartbreak someone inflicts. You are more than your past version. Now, if this story made you feel braver, wiser, or just less alone, don't let it stay here. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own hidden strength, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that peel back the glitter and reveal what truly matters underneath. Until next time, hold your head high, guard your peace fiercely, and remember, sometimes the quietest souls roar the loudest when it matters most.